March 14, 1951. 11:47 p.m. Betty Lou Armstrong punches her time card at Birmingham Steel Works. The metal stamp clicks. She removes her work gloves, wipes her forehead. Her shift is over. By midnight, the factory whistle screams. Workers flood toward the parking lot. Betty Lou walks with them, her blue coveralls dusted with metal shavings, her red scarf bright against the darkness. 12:15 a.m. Her coworker Martha Allison waves goodbye, watches Betty Lou head toward her car. 12:35 a.m. Betty Lou should be walking through her front door. 1:30 a.m. Her husband James calls the police. 3 a.m. Officers find her car in the employee parking lot. Engine cold. Driver's door slightly ajar. Her purse sits on the passenger seat. Keys dangle from the ignition. Her thermos still half full of coffee. Betty Lou Armstrong is gone. 30 feet from her car, investigators find a single brown leather work glove. It doesn't belong to Betty Lou. It doesn't belong to anyone at the factory. By the time her husband called the police, Betty Lou Armstrong had been missing for 9 hours. By the time they found what was left behind, 73 years had passed. Before we go further into one of Alabama's most haunting cold cases, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, because what happened to Betty Lou connects to something far darker than anyone in 1951 could have imagined. This is a story about a vanishing, a decades-long search, and a predator who hid in plain sight for 73 years. To understand what was taken from the world on March 14, 1951, you need to know who Betty Lou Armstrong was. She was 34 years old, a mother of 2, a war widow who'd remarried, a woman who worked the night shift because it paid 20 cents more per hour, and 20 cents mattered when you had mouths to feed. Betty Lou had been born Betty Lou Hendricks in 1917, in a small town outside Mobile. She married young, 18 years old, to a man named Thomas Clayton. They had 2 children, Linda, born in 1940, and Michael, born in 1942. Thomas went to war in 1943. He died at Normandy in 1944, leaving Betty Lou a widow at 27 with 2 small children and a Purple Heart she kept in a cigar box. She moved to Birmingham in 1946. Found work at Birmingham Steel Works, one of the few factories hiring women in the post-war boom. The work was hard, loading metal sheets, operating machinery, 10-hour shifts in heat that turned the factory floor into a furnace. But Betty Lou never complained. She never missed a shift. In 1948, she met James Armstrong at a church social. He was an electrician, a Korean War veteran with kind eyes and steady hands. They married that same year. James adopted Linda and Michael. They called him Dad. By 1951, life had found a rhythm. Betty Lou worked nights, 6 p.m. to midnight, 5 days a week. James worked days. They passed each other like ships, kissing in doorways, leaving notes on the kitchen table. It wasn't easy, but it was theirs. Her routine never changed. Every evening at 5:30, she'd kiss her children goodnight. Linda was 11, Michael was 9. She'd pack her thermos with coffee, grab her work gloves, check her reflection in the hallway mirror. She always wore the red scarf James had given her for Christmas. She said it made her feel pretty, even covered in factory grime. Her coworkers remembered her as quiet but warm. She brought homemade biscuits on Fridays. She never gossiped. She had a photograph of her children tucked into her locker, and she'd look at it during breaks, smiling. On the morning of March 14th, before she left for her shift, she told Linda she'd be home to make pancakes. Betty Lou Armstrong never broke a promise. Until that night. Let's reconstruct the last hours of Betty Lou Armstrong's life. Every minute matters. Every detail is a clue. 6 p.m., Betty Lou arrives at Birmingham Steel Works. She parks in her usual spot, 3rd row from the building. She clocks in. Her time card shows 6:04 p.m. 6:15 p.m. to 11:45 p.m., she works her shift. Loading bay assignments. Metal sheets, conveyor belts, the constant roar of machinery. Coworkers see her throughout the night. Nothing unusual. Nothing wrong. 11:47 p.m., Betty Lou punches out. Her time card records it. This is the last official documentation of her existence. 11:50 p.m., she stops at her locker. Removes her heavy work gloves, replaces them with lighter ones for driving. She grabs her purse. She's seen walking toward the exit with a group of women, standard protocol. They never walked alone at night. 12:05 a.m., the group reaches the parking lot. Most of the women head toward the south end. Betty Lou's car is parked to the east. She waves goodbye. 12:15 a.m., Martha Allison, her closest friend at the factory, sees Betty Lou walking toward her car. Martha is getting into her own vehicle 40 feet away. She watches Betty Lou for just a moment. Betty Lou is 20 feet from her car. Then Martha starts her engine, adjusts her mirror. When Martha looks up again, Betty Lou has reached her car. That's the last confirmed sighting of Betty Lou Armstrong alive. 12:20 a.m., estimated time Betty Lou should have reached her vehicle, gotten inside, started driving home. 12:35 a.m., Betty Lou's usual arrival time at home. James Armstrong is waiting in the kitchen. Coffee brewing. He always waited up. 12:45 a.m., James checks the window. No headlights coming up the road. 1:15 a.m., he calls the factory. The night manager says everyone clocked out. Betty Lou left on time. 1:30 a.m., James calls the Birmingham Police Department. They tell him to wait. Women sometimes stop for gas, visit friends, have car trouble. 2 a.m., James drives to the factory himself. He finds Betty Lou's car in the parking lot. 3 a.m., police arrive. They examine the vehicle. Driver's door slightly ajar, not wide open, just unlatched. Engine cold. No signs of struggle inside the car. Her purse sits on the passenger seat, wallet intact, $3.40 inside. Her keys hang from the ignition. The thermos sheet filled at 5:30 p.m. sits in the cup holder half full. Betty Lou's lighter driving gloves are gone, she would have been wearing them. But 30 feet from her car, investigators find something else. A brown leather work glove. Men's size large. Worn, stained with oil. It doesn't belong to Betty Lou. It doesn't match any gloves owned by factory workers questioned that night. The last person to see Betty Lou Armstrong alive was Martha Ellison, watching her walk toward her car at 12:15 a.m. But someone else saw her after that. Someone who made sure she'd never be seen again. James Armstrong collapses in the Birmingham Police Department lobby at 4 a.m. Officers catch him before he hits the floor. She wouldn't leave us, he keeps saying. Betty Lou wouldn't leave her children. The police believe him. Everything about the scene suggests abduction, not abandonment. A woman doesn't leave her purse, her money, her keys. She doesn't leave her car door open. She doesn't vanish into darkness without a trace. Detective Harold Mitchum takes the case. He's 42 years old, a World War II veteran, Birmingham PD's lead investigator. He's worked murders, robberies, assaults. But this, a woman simply erased from existence, this is different. Within hours, the factory becomes a crime scene. Police interview every worker on Betty Lou's shift. 53 people. Every single one tells the same story. Betty Lou had no enemies. No secret boyfriend. No gambling debts. No reason to run. Bloodhounds arrive at dawn. They're given Betty Lou's scarf to smell, then released in the parking lot. The dogs track her scent from the factory exit to her car. Then they circle, confused. The scent stops. It doesn't continue toward the road, doesn't lead into the woods bordering the property. It just ends. Search parties form. Volunteers, factory workers, church members, neighbors, comb the woods surrounding Birmingham Steel Works. They search the nearby riverbank. Abandoned buildings. Empty lots. They find nothing. The newspapers pick up the story on March 16th. Local mother vanishes without trace. Betty Lou's photograph runs on the front page. She's smiling in the picture, wearing the red scarf. Tips flood the police station. Someone saw a suspicious man near the factory. Someone heard screaming that night. Someone remembers a strange car in the parking lot. Detective Mitchum chases every lead. Every single one turns into smoke. The brown leather glove goes to the forensics department. In 1951, forensic science is primitive. No DNA testing. No genetic analysis. Fingerprints are the gold standard, but the glove yields nothing. The leather's too worn, too contaminated. 1 week passes. No body. No witnesses. No answers. Detective Mitchum stands in the parking lot where Betty Lou's car was found. He looks at the spot where the glove was discovered. 30 feet. That's how far someone carried or dragged her before she disappeared completely. This wasn't a woman who ran away, Mitchum tells his partner. This was an abduction. Someone took her. But who? And why? And where is Betty Lou Armstrong? Fear spreads through Birmingham like smoke. Within a week of Betty Lou's disappearance, women at Birmingham Steel Works refuse to walk to their cars alone. They travel in groups of 4, 5, 6. Some women quit the night shift entirely. The factory parking lot, once filled with cars, becomes half empty. Rumors circulate. Whispered theories in grocery stores, beauty parlors, church pews. Some say Betty Lou had a secret lover, ran away to start fresh somewhere else. James Armstrong becomes a suspect in the court of public opinion, though police clear him completely. He was home with the children and neighbors confirm his alibi. Other theories are darker. This is 1951 Alabama, and racism poisons every conversation. Some blame a colored man, despite zero evidence. Some whisper about drifters, hobos riding the rails. Some believe it was someone at the factory, someone who'd been watching Betty Lou for weeks. The fear becomes suffocating. Parents keep daughters home after dark. Husbands forbid wives from working nights. The world shrinks. Then Detective Mitchum makes a discovery that changes everything. He's reviewing missing persons reports from surrounding counties, looking for patterns. And he finds them. Clara Bivens, 29, nurse. Disappeared October 1949 in Tuscaloosa, 40 miles from Birmingham. Last seen leaving the hospital after her shift. Car found in the parking lot. No trace. Dorothy Hale, 31, schoolteacher. Disappeared April 1950 in Anniston, 60 miles from Birmingham. Last seen leaving a night class she taught for adults. Car found near the school. No trace. Sarah Colburn, 27, waitress. Disappeared January 1951 in Birmingham, 2 months before Betty Lou. Last seen leaving the diner where she worked the late shift. Car found in the parking lot. No trace. 4 women. All between ages 27 and 34. All working class. All disappeared between midnight and 2 a.m. All last seen near their vehicles. All simply gone. In 1951, different jurisdictions don't communicate well. Each police department investigated their case independently. No one connected the pattern. Until now. What Detective Mitchum doesn't know in 1951 is that he's hunting a predator who's been perfecting his method for years. And that predator is just getting started. Detective Harold Mitchum's office becomes a shrine to the missing. Photographs cover every wall. Betty Lou Armstrong. Clara Bivens. Dorothy Hale. Sarah Colburn. 4 faces staring at him, asking why. Asking how. Asking where. Maps spread across his desk. Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, Anniston. Red pins mark the abduction sites. Mitchum draws lines between them, calculates distances, searches for connections. His wife, Eleanor, begs him to come home at reasonable hours. "You're killing yourself over this," she says. He barely hears her. He's too busy trying to find the invisible thread linking 4 women across 2 years. The pattern is there. He knows it. All 4 women worked nights. All 4 disappeared between midnight and 2 a.m. All 4 were found, or rather their cars were found, in parking lots, keys inside. All 4 simply evaporated. No bodies. No crime scenes. No physical evidence beyond that single brown glove. Mitchum begins interviewing hundreds of men. Factory workers. Truck drivers. Railroad employees. Drifters passing through. Anyone who works nights, anyone with access to these locations, anyone without a solid alibi. In June 1951, a name surfaces. Robert Bobby Sinclair. Sinclair is 38 years old. He works for Southern Railroad as a maintenance supervisor. His job requires him to travel between Birmingham, Tuscaloosa, and Anniston, inspecting tracks, coordinating repairs, managing crew schedules. Mitchum pulls Sinclair's work records. The dates make his blood run cold. October 12, 1949, Clara Bivens disappears in Tuscaloosa. Sinclair's crew was repairing track outside Tuscaloosa that week. April 8, 1950, Dorothy Hale disappears in Anniston. Sinclair was supervising night work near Anniston. January 19, 1951, Sarah Colburn disappears in Birmingham. Sinclair was working the night shift at Birmingham's main rail yard. March 14, 1951, Betty Lou Armstrong disappears. Sinclair's time card shows he clocked out at 11:30 p.m. that night. The rail yard is 2 miles from Birmingham Steel Works. Mitchum brings Sinclair in for questioning. 3 times. Sinclair is calm, cooperative. He has an alibi for each disappearance. Not airtight, but plausible. He was working. He was home asleep. He was at a bar. He provides names, places, times. But something about Sinclair makes Mitchum's skin crawl. The man is too calm. Too helpful. Too interested in the details of each case. "It's terrible what happened to those women," Sinclair says during the 3rd interview. "I hope you find whoever did this." Mitchum has no evidence. No witnesses. No physical proof linking Sinclair to any disappearance. In August 1953, Robert Sinclair transfers to Tennessee. He moves to Knoxville, takes a job with a different railroad company. The case stalls. Detective Harold Mitchum would die in 1979, never knowing he'd been right all along. The case of Betty Lou Armstrong becomes a ghost. 1960s, the file is officially closed as unsolved. Boxes containing evidence, the brown glove, witness statements, photographs, are moved to the basement of Birmingham Police Headquarters. Dust settles on them like snow. 1970s, Betty Lou's children, now adults, refuse to forget. Linda Armstrong Hayes is 32 years old in 1972. She writes letters to the police department every year on March 14th. "Please don't forget my mother," she writes. "Please keep looking." Michael Armstrong, her brother, becomes a private investigator. He spends his free time chasing leads that go nowhere. He interviews old factory workers. He reviews the case files until he's memorized every word. He can't let her go. 1982, Linda appears on local television, holding her mother's photograph. She's 42 years old now, older than Betty Lou ever got to be. "I just want to know where my mother is," she tells the camera. "I just want to bring her home." Tips come in. None lead anywhere. 1990s, DNA technology emerges, revolutionizing forensic science. Cold case units form across America. Birmingham PD reviews old files, looking for cases that might benefit from new technology. The brown glove is submitted for DNA testing in 1998. Results come back inconclusive. The sample is too degraded, too contaminated by decades in storage. The case goes back into the basement. 2000s, Linda's children take up the search. They create a website, Justice for Betty Lou Armstrong. They share the story on early social media platforms. They contact true crime forums. In 2007, remains are found in a wooded area near Birmingham. For 48 hours, Linda believes it's her mother. The dental records don't match. It's someone else, another Jane Doe, another family's nightmare. 2010, James Armstrong dies at age 89. He's buried in Elmwood Cemetery. The plot beside him remains empty, reserved for a wife who never came home. 2015, a drifter named Carl Hutchins makes a deathbed confession. He's dying of cancer, tells a prison chaplain he killed a woman in Birmingham in 1951. Linda rushes to the hospital. Hutchins describes Betty Lou, but his details are wrong. The location is wrong. The police determine he read about the case online, fabricated the confession for attention. Another dead end. 2018, true crime podcasts discover Betty Lou's story. Episodes titled, "The Night Shift Vanishing," bring renewed attention. Thousands of people hear her name. Armchair detectives propose theories. But theories aren't evidence. Linda Armstrong Hayes turns 75 in 2023. She spent her entire life searching for her mother. She's tired. She's running out of time. On March 14, 2023, 72 years after her mother's disappearance, Linda writes one more letter to Birmingham Police Department. "I'm 75 years old. Please, before I die, tell me what happened to my mother." That letter lands on the desk of Detective Sarah Chin, newly assigned to the cold case unit. Detective Chin has no idea that Linda Armstrong Hayes' letter will crack open a case frozen for 73 years. To grow up in the Armstrong family is to grow up with a ghost. Linda Armstrong Hayes is 76 years old now. She has children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. She's lived a full life, marriage, career, joy, sorrow. But there's always been a shadow. The phantom presence of a mother she barely remembers. Linda was 11 when Betty Lou disappeared. She remembers fragments. Her mother's perfume. The way she hummed while making breakfast. The red scarf. The goodbye kiss that last evening, Betty Lou's lips on her forehead, whispered words, "Be good for Daddy." For 73 years, Linda has carried that goodbye. The Armstrong family holds rituals for a woman without a grave. Birthday dinners with an empty chair. Christmas mornings when someone, usually Linda, says quietly, "Mom would have loved this." Mother's Day visits to a cemetery plot containing only James, the space beside him waiting. Linda's children grew up with the story. "Your grandmother disappeared," Linda told them when they were old enough to understand. "Someone took her and we never found out who." Her grandchildren know the story. Her great-grandchildren know the story. Betty Lou Armstrong becomes mythology, passed down through generations. The psychological toll is immeasurable. You can't grieve someone who never got a funeral. You can't find closure when there's no body, no arrest, no answer. Linda keeps her mother's belongings in a cedar chest. The red scarf, carefully preserved. The wedding ring found in Betty Lou's purse that night. Photographs. Letters. The purple heart that belonged to Betty Lou's first husband. Every March 14th, Linda drives to the site where Birmingham Steel Works once stood. The factory was demolished in 1987. A parking garage stands there now. She parks in what she believes was the approximate location of her mother's car. She sits. She remembers. She cries. In 2023, Linda decides to try one more time. She's 75 years old. She doesn't have many years left. She writes the letter to Birmingham PD, pours her heart onto the page. Please. Before I die, tell me what happened to my mother. That letter reaches Detective Sarah Chin in April 2023. Chin is 36 years old, a forensic specialist with a master's degree in criminal justice. She's passionate about cold cases, believes advances in technology can solve the unsolvable. She reads Linda's letter. She pulls the Betty Lou Armstrong file. And she decides to try something new. Detective Sarah Chen requests the evidence box from storage in May 2023. The brown leather glove sits in a plastic bag, tagged and sealed since 1998, the last time it was tested. Chen knows that DNA technology has advanced exponentially in 25 years. Touch DNA, genetic material left behind by simple contact, can now be extracted from surfaces that would have yielded nothing decades ago. She sends the glove to a private forensics laboratory specializing in cold cases. August 2023, results come back. They've extracted a partial DNA profile from the interior of the glove. Male. Caucasian ancestry. Enough markers for genetic genealogy analysis. Chen uploads the profile to GeneMatch and Family Tree DNA, public databases where people voluntarily submit their genetic information to find relatives. There are no direct matches. But there are distant cousins, third cousins, fourth cousins, people who share small segments of DNA with the unknown profile. Chen contacts a forensic genealogist named Rebecca Holt. Together they begin the painstaking work of building family trees. They trace the DNA matches backward through generations. Birth certificates, marriage licenses, census records, obituaries. They construct family trees spanning 150 years, looking for the point where the branches converge. November 2023, they identify a common ancestral couple, William and Martha Sinclair, who lived in northeastern Alabama in the 1870s. From there, they trace forward through descendants. William and Martha had 7 children. Those children had dozens of grandchildren. The tree spreads like roots. One branch leads to a man named Robert Bobby Sinclair, born 1913, died 1987. Chen's heart stops when she sees the name. She pulls the original case files from 1951. Detective Harold Mitchum's notes. His suspect list. There, underlined 3 times, Robert Bobby Sinclair. Railroad worker. Primary suspect. Insufficient evidence. Chen digs deeper. Sinclair died in Knoxville, Tennessee in 1987, buried at Highland Memorial Cemetery. He was 73 years old. Heart attack. She needs to confirm the DNA match. She needs Sinclair's body. December 2023, Chen petitions for an exhumation order. She presents the genetic genealogy evidence, the historical investigation, the pattern of disappearances. The judge grants the order. January 18, 2024, Robert Sinclair's grave is opened. His remains are collected. Bone samples are sent for DNA analysis. February 2024, the results come back. 99.7% probability match. The brown leather glove found 30 feet from Betty Lou Armstrong's car belonged to Robert Sinclair. Chen begins reconstructing Sinclair's life. Employment records. Addresses. Timelines. Robert Sinclair worked for Southern Railroad from 1945 to 1971. Maintenance supervisor. His job required constant travel, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia. He moved frequently, never staying in one place more than a few years. He married 3 times. First marriage ended in 1948. Wife filed for divorce, no details. Second marriage ended in 1956. Wife left him, no forwarding address. Third marriage lasted from 1959 until his death in 1987. None of his ex-wives ever reported abuse, but court records show both divorces cited irreconcilable differences and unbearable living conditions. Chen cross-references Sinclair's employment history with missing persons cases from 1945 to 1971. The results make her physically ill. 11 women disappeared in cities where Robert Sinclair worked or lived. All between ages 25 and 38. All working class. All last seen between midnight and 2 a.m. All vanished without a trace. 11 women across 26 years. Robert Sinclair had been dead for 37 years. But his victims were still waiting to be found. Detective Chun contacts the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. Together they build a profile of Robert Sinclair. What emerges is the portrait of an organized, methodical predator who operated for decades without detection. Sinclair's method was devastatingly simple. He targeted women leaving night shifts, approaching them as they reached their vehicles. He likely posed as someone offering help, car trouble, directions, perhaps claiming to be security or a concerned coworker. Once close enough, he overpowered them and abducted them. His occupation gave him the perfect cover. Railroad maintenance work meant constant travel, unusual hours, access to isolated areas. He knew every abandoned stretch of track, every wooded area, every place where a body could disappear. The fact that he worked nights meant his absence during those critical hours raised no suspicion. Working late was his perpetual alibi. In March 2024, Chin organizes search efforts along former railroad routes in Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia. Ground-penetrating radar teams scan wooded areas near abandoned rail lines. March 28, 2024. Remains are discovered in a heavily wooded area 40 miles northeast of Birmingham, less than a quarter mile from an old railroad maintenance station. Forensic anthropologists carefully excavate the site. They find skeletal remains, female, approximately 30 to 35 years old at time of death. Dental records are compared against missing persons databases. The match comes back: Betty Lou Armstrong. Cause of death: blunt force trauma to the skull. Linda Armstrong Hayes receives the call on March 29. She's been waiting 73 years for this phone call. When Chin tells her, Linda doesn't scream. She doesn't cry. She just exhales, a long, shaking breath that seems to release 7 decades of tension. "Thank you," she whispers. "Thank you for bringing her home." The searches continue. Over the next 2 months, investigators discover 4 more burial sites along Sinclair's routes. Clara Bivens, the nurse from Tuscaloosa, found May 2nd. Dorothy Hale, the schoolteacher from Anniston, found May 15th. Sarah Colburn, the waitress from Birmingham, found June 3rd. 2 additional sets of remains, women who match the timeline and location of unsolved disappearances but haven't been identified. Jane Does, who might never have names. All buried near railroad maintenance stations. All showing signs of blunt force trauma. Chin interviews Sinclair's 3rd wife, now 92 years old and living in a nursing home. The woman is frail but lucid. She describes Sinclair as controlling, cold, distant. He would disappear for days without explanation. He never talked about his work. He forbade her from asking questions. "I was afraid of him," she admits. "I don't know why. He never hit me. But there was something in his eyes." Investigators find Sinclair's old railroad logbook in a storage unit in Tennessee. The entries are coded: numbers, letters, abbreviations that mean nothing to outsiders. But when cross-referenced with the disappearance dates, a pattern emerges. Coded entries on every date a woman vanished. Robert Sinclair kept a record of his kills. The man who'd been invisible for 73 years finally had a face. And that face had been hiding in plain sight all along. April 15, 2024. Birmingham Police Department holds a press conference. The room is packed. Journalists, cameras, community members who remember 1951. Linda Armstrong Hayes sits in the front row, clutching a framed photograph of her mother. Detective Sarah Chin steps to the podium. 73 years ago, Betty Lou Armstrong disappeared from the parking lot of Birmingham Steel Works. Today we can say with certainty, Betty Lou Armstrong was murdered by Robert Sinclair, a railroad maintenance worker who killed at least 7 women between 1949 and 1971. The room erupts. Cameras flash. Reporters shout questions. Chin continues. "Through advanced DNA technology and forensic genealogy, we were able to identify Mr. Sinclair as the perpetrator. His remains were exhumed, and DNA extracted from a glove found at the original crime scene matched his profile with 99.7% certainty. We have also recovered the remains of Betty Lou Armstrong and 6 other victims." She lists the names: Clara Bivens, Dorothy Hale, Sarah Colburn, 3 others. While Mr. Sinclair died in 1987, we believe justice is served when the truth is known, when families receive answers, and when victims are finally brought home. After the press conference, Linda Armstrong Hayes gives a statement. She's 76 years old now, her hair white, her hands shaking as she holds the microphone. "For 73 years, we didn't know if my mother left us or if someone took her from us. Now we know. Someone took her. A monster took her. But she's coming home now. She's finally coming home." On May 3, 2024, Betty Lou Armstrong's remains are buried beside James Armstrong in Elmwood Cemetery. A new headstone is placed. Betty Lou Armstrong, 1917 to 1951. Beloved mother, wife, daughter. Forever in our hearts. The funeral is attended by over 200 people. Linda. Her children. Her grandchildren. Her great-grandchildren. For generations who grew up with a ghost. Also present, Detective Sarah Chin. Representatives from families of the other victims. Community members who remember the fear of 1951. A minister speaks about justice delayed but not denied. About truth that outlasts death. About love that survives 73 years of absence. Linda places the red scarf on her mother's casket. It's faded now, fragile with age. But it's the last piece of Betty Lou, the last tangible memory. I kept my promise, Mom, Linda whispers. I never stopped looking. You're home now. The Birmingham Police Department officially closes the case. Robert Sinclair is posthumously named as perpetrator. No trial. No conviction. But the truth finally is known. In the months following Betty Lou Armstrong's burial, Linda Armstrong Hayes says something profound. I can grieve now. For 73 years I couldn't. I was suspended in this awful in-between place, not knowing if I should mourn or hope. Now I know. Now I can grieve properly. Now I can heal. On September 12, 2024, Birmingham's historic district unveils a memorial. 7 names carved in black granite. Betty Lou Armstrong, Clara Bivens, Dorothy Hale, Sarah Colburn, Jane Doe No. 1, Jane Doe No. 2, Jane Doe No. 3. In memory of the women lost to violence, found through perseverance. The memorial is Detective Mitchum's vindication. His widow, Eleanor Mitchum, now 94 years old, attends the ceremony in a wheelchair. When she sees Sinclair's name confirmed as the killer, she weeps. Harold never stopped believing, she tells Detective Chin. Every night for 26 years until the day he died, he talked about those women. He knew someone had taken them. He knew. I'm just sorry he didn't live to see this. The case raises broader questions that haunt Chin. How many other Robert Sinclairs are out there? Men who killed for decades, died naturally, their crimes buried with them? How many Jane Does are still waiting in unmarked graves along forgotten routes? The FBI estimates there are over 250,000 unsolved missing persons cases in America. How many could be solved with the technology that found Betty Lou? Chin becomes an advocate for forensic genealogy in cold cases. She speaks at conferences, trains other detectives, pushes for funding. But she also thinks about the families. The decades of not knowing. The birthdays and holidays and ordinary Tuesdays shadowed by absence. Linda Armstrong Hayes visits her mother's grave every Sunday now. Sometimes she brings flowers. Sometimes she just sits on the grass and talks, telling Betty Lou about her life, her children, her grandchildren. All the things her mother missed. The truth doesn't have an expiration date, Chin tells a reporter from 60 Minutes. Neither does justice. These women waited 70 years to be found. Some are still waiting. We owe them our persistence. We owe them their names. We owe them the truth. In December 2024, Linda Armstrong Hayes celebrates her 77th birthday. Her family gathers, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. 40 people descended from a woman who disappeared in 1951. During dinner, Linda's great-granddaughter, 8 years old, asks about the photograph on the mantel. Betty Lou in her red scarf, smiling. That's your great-great-grandmother, Linda says. Her name was Betty Lou. Someone took her from us a long time ago. But we never forgot her. And we never stopped looking. And we found her. The little girl studies the photograph. She's pretty? Yes, Linda says. She was. On March 14, 2025, 74 years after Betty Lou Armstrong clocked out of Birmingham Steel Works for the last time, Linda returns to the site. The parking garage. The place where it all ended. But this time she's not alone. Detective Chin accompanies her. They stand together in silence. Do you believe in closure? Linda asks. Chin considers the question. I believe in answers. I believe in truth. I believe those things can help us live with loss, even if they can't erase it. Linda nods. I used to dream about her every night. Always the same dream. She's walking toward her car and I'm screaming for her to stop, to turn around, but she can't hear me. I haven't had that dream since we buried her. She places a single rose on the ground. Red like the scarf. How many others are out there? Linda asks quietly. How many families are still waiting? Chin doesn't have an answer. But she knows the work continues. Across America, in basements and storage facilities, thousands of cold case files wait in boxes. Photographs of faces. Evidence bags containing gloves, clothing, fragments of lives interrupted. Women, men, children who disappeared and were forgotten. But forensic technology advances every year. Genetic genealogy becomes more sophisticated. Databases grow. New detectives take up old cases. And sometimes, not often enough but sometimes, the missing come home. Betty Lou Armstrong waited 73 years to be found. Her daughter waited 73 years for answers. Detective Mitchum waited 26 years, never living to see his suspicions confirmed. But the truth doesn't expire. It waits in DNA molecules, in buried remains, in coded logbooks hidden in storage units. It waits for someone persistent enough to look. How many others are still waiting? How many families mark anniversaries of disappearances, visit empty graves, keep photographs on mantles, tell stories to children who never met the missing? How many monsters died peacefully, their secrets buried with them? The questions haunt Detective Sarah Chin. But they also drive her. Every cold case she opens is someone's mother, daughter, sister, wife. Someone's son, father, brother, husband. Someone who deserves to be more than a mystery. On a quiet Sunday in spring, Linda Armstrong Hayes sits beside her mother's grave. The grass has grown over the fresh earth. Flowers bloom around the headstone. She traces her fingers over the carved letters. Betty Lou Armstrong, 1917 to 1951. "I'm 77 now, Mom," she says softly. "Older than you ever got to be. I've lived a whole life you never saw. But you were always with me. In every moment. Every choice. Every time I looked at my children and grandchildren, I saw you looking back at me." A breeze moves through the cemetery. The trees whisper. "I hope you're at peace now. I hope you know we never forgot you. We never stopped loving you. And we never ever stopped looking." Linda places the red scarf on the grave, the one Betty Lou wore that last night. She's kept it preserved for 74 years. Now she leaves it here, a final offering. "Rest now, Mom. You're home. You're finally home." She stands, brushes grass from her knees and walks away. Behind her, 7 decades of searching come to an end. Ahead, other families continue searching. Other cases wait in darkness. Other victims wait to be found. But today, Betty Lou Armstrong rests beside her husband, beneath Alabama soil, her name restored, her story told. The truth doesn't have an expiration date. Neither does justice. And neither does love.